some of the most unsettling stories on the internet don't end with a twist. They end by vanishing. No explanation or archive. No way to confirm what was real and what was fabricated. Only fragments passed around by people who swear they saw it before it disappeared. On August 22nd, an anonymous user made a post to be 4chan's random board, claiming they had a true and disturbing story to share. OP opened with a tone that felt half defensive, as if already expecting to be mocked or ignored. Anon had taken the photos earlier that day and admitted there was no timestamp. But instead of asking for trust, they did something unusual. They gave an exact real-world location where the images were taken and encouraged anyone who doubted them to go there and see for themselves. Then OP began explaining. 3 days ago, my last living grandparent, my mother's father, passed away at the age of 89. He was a World War II vet, and my mum tells me that after returning home from the Navy, he was never quite the same. In fact, he was pretty paranoid about nearly everything. I was never really allowed to stay at his house. In 1965, his wife died suddenly with no real explanation. My mother tells me that my grandfather became extremely fearful of a nuclear war with the communists, and that he started to dig a bomb shelter out of the rock and limestone on his land. I had never saw the bomb shelter until today, when the family was going through my grandfather's belongings. PIC related, it's the entrance. I had only ever asked my grandfather about his hand-dug cave one time in my life, which was when I was about 16 or so, when we got together for Christmas. He didn't really seem to want to talk about it. He just told me to not ever go there, because it's just a damn blank. What the word in the blank was, I've never been able to figure out. No amount of Googling helped me determine what he said. All I know is it sounded like "ah-su-air." The way he said it was creepy enough that I never asked about it again. This picture is of you back towards a door after you go down some steps. I hadn't even thought about the shelter since then until today, when my mother asked me to go and check it out and see if I could find anything worth putting into the estate sale. To be honest, I was pretty excited. I thought maybe I'd find old gas masks, non-perishable food items from the 60s, and maybe even some forms of entertainment that he had planned to use to keep the family busy in the event of an attack. This picture is the first hallway, which curves off to the right at the end. The first thing I found was this rudimentary toilet. Of course, time wasn't kind to it, so there wasn't much left. It had obviously been in disrepair for years. I just snapped a picture of it and kept going. Although I did have to admire the work that had to have gone into chipping away at the rock, one heave at a time. But further down the hallway, I came to nothing more than a bunch of old rusted garbage on the floor. I instantly felt my heart sink, because I had such high hopes for what this exploration would yield. It was beginning to look like my grandfather had just given up at some point on his dream of crafting a shelter. PIC related, it's the garbage. But you'll notice that in the previous picture, the hallway curves off to the left. I was expecting to hit a flat wall of rock, but instead I found a huge iron door that was padlocked shut. Unfortunately for me, it had become rusted to all hell, so I was actually able to just pick up a decent-sized rock off the floor and hit the padlock until it busted the entire loop that it went through. Opening the door was another story though. It was extremely heavy and had become rusted shut over the years. I found a shovel back in the garbage heap and used all my strength to force it open with a lever action. Pick related. It's a view after I got the damn thing open. The only thing back here was a hallway that did abruptly end where he had stopped digging. But there was a doorway off to the right. I went through the doorway, and inside this room looked more like a cavern than a bomb shelter. As I looked around, I noticed this freaking carving in the stone. At first I thought, oh, no big deal. Maybe he just came back here to pray or something. But that's when I started to notice that there were more carvings. Suddenly, I see this face carved in the rock. There were faces everywhere. Seriously, it was as though there were a bunch of ghostly faces staring you down in that room. Pick related. And here's another example. I noticed that while the previous one appeared to be a soft female face, this one was an angry male face. And there were, really, quite a few of them. I don't know, probably 6 or 7. They were all carved into the walls as though they were facing that cross carving, worshipping it or something. I happened to look down at the ground below the skull carving, and there, sitting in a bunch of concrete rubble, was a freaking bone. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just a damn Nancy. This was no deer bone. This was clearly a human bone. My heart was pounding out of my chest. As I started to look more closely, I saw more bones coming out of the concrete, as though human remains had been dumped in a batch of quick-dry cement or something. Then, I could have sworn I heard a quiet laugh from the corner of that room. And I freaking bolted. I ran out of that room like the devil was chasing me. I ran all the way out of the shelter, all the way back to the house. And that was the last update on the story. However, there is a speculation on what the shelter could be. OP had mentioned earlier the word their grandfather used to describe the structure. Something that sounded like assuar. The theory is that the word wasn't a shelter at all, but an ossuary, a place designed to store skeletal remains. Famous examples include the Paris catacombs, where bones are arranged and preserved underground. If the grandfather had been mentally unstable, especially after the trauma of war and the sudden death of his wife, the theory suggested this cavern may have been intended as a final resting place for loved ones, or something far more ritualistic. Before the discussion could go any further, the entire thread vanished. No proper archive was ever recovered, and no follow-up from the OP was recorded. The only reason this story is remembered at all is because of a single surviving screenshot, quietly passed around for years, detached from its original context. And just like that, one of the most unsettling posts to ever surface on B became another piece of internet folklore, hovering in that uncomfortable space between hoax, horror, and something we were never supposed to see. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more such content. Subscribe to my Patreon if you want to support the channel. And as always, stay safe. Good night.